Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get into the Word of God. Let's go to the book of Romans as we continue our series, and we will go to chapter number 13. And once again, we will read verses 8 and 9 for now. The whole series is 8 through 10. But we've been looking at this concept of love. Owe no man anything, verse 8, but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. And we talked about that last week, how love fulfills the law. And then verse 9 lists a whole bunch of commandments. Well, not a whole bunch, but just a small list of commandments. Definitely not all of them. And we've been looking at each one of these commandments. But in the end of the verse, it kind of summarizes that, after it lists the commandments, that all of these commandments are briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So all of these commandments are briefly comprehended in that saying, loving your neighbor as yourself. So let's go to the next commandment that is on the list. So let's just start at the beginning of verse 9 for this. Thou shalt not commit adultery. We looked at that already. Thou shalt not kill. We looked at that already. Thou shalt not steal. And thou shalt not bear false witness. And then today we'll look at this next one. Thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not covet. That is one of the 10 commandments. Very, very important commandment. Covetousness is when you desire to have that which belongs to someone else. So someone else has it, and you think you deserve it somehow, or even if you don't deserve it, you want it. You want what somebody else has. That is covetousness. And I tell you, that, unfortunately, is the American lifestyle. There's even a saying for that, right? Keeping up with the Joneses. It's like your neighbor has it, then you have to have it. Because if your neighbor has it, then you certainly deserve to have it. Let me tell you, covetousness is probably one of the most selfish things that can be a part of our culture, and that a person can be. And it's not just coveting things. But then when somebody becomes so self-centered and so selfish and unloving, by the way, because when all of this occurs, you are draining yourself of love. You cannot be filled with self and with biblical love at the same time, because the more you fill the one, the less the other will be, and vice versa. So the more you fill your heart with love, biblical love, true biblical love, God's love, the less you think of yourself, the less self you have inside your heart, inside your mind, your thoughts. And of course, it works inversely with each other. And covetousness is one of those things. It's a very, very good indicator of how much you're filled with self versus how much you're filled with love. If you see a neighbor and he just got a nicer car than you, if you are filled with love, you would be happy for that neighbor. But if you're filled with covetousness, then you would not be happy for that neighbor. And in fact, you would desire to have it for yourself. And it goes even deeper than that and worse than that. When somebody is so selfish, they begin to covet somebody else's spouse, somebody else's wife. A man that looks upon another man's wife and says, "Oh, I want to take her away from her husband and for myself." That is just one of those wicked, selfish things anyone can ever, without actually doing it, just thinking it, is absolutely wicked, evil, and sinful. Covetousness doesn't have to result in the action being taken, to actually obtain that object that you want, or the person that you want, whatever it is, to fulfill your covetous lust. But even just the very thought of covetousness is already sin. It already reveals a lack of love in your heart. Anytime you are jealous at anybody else's success or personal belonging that they have, or anything, to where you think in your mind that you know what? I deserve that more than they do, or I want that. I want that instead of that person. It is absolutely void of love. You cannot say you are a loving Christian to any kind of capacity if there's even an ounce of covetousness in your heart. And this has become a poison in our country, where the American culture widely accepts covetousness, to desire that which somebody else has, and to try to improve yourself so that you can get more and bigger things than your neighbor. That's absolutely unbiblical and unchristian. Love thinks of others before you think of self. And love thinks of God, definitely, before you think of self. It's always in that order: God, others. In fact, you yourself, you shouldn't even be on the list. It's God and others. That should be all that a Christian thinks about. It's God and others. And so be careful about this thing called covetousness, because it can absolutely create a root of bitterness, and it can very quickly turn us to sin. So stay away from it and fill your hearts with love. Thank you so much for joining me today. God bless you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.